There has never been a better time to be an elite baseball player. From scholarships, NIL opportunities, signing bonuses, and record-breaking MLB contracts, the upside has never been higher. But it's also the most competitive time of baseball right now, and most won't break through. But after developing myself into a legit Division I and MLB prospect and helping others do the same, we've created a proven system to become an elite pitching prospect. Today, I'm revealing exactly what it takes to become a top 1% athlete that'll get you the opportunities that you want. Now, if you're new here, my name is Josh Gessner, and there are no guarantees that after watching this video that you'll become a legit prospect, but I'm gonna do my best to hand down the lessons that I've learned from developing myself into a legit prospect after seeing what works with the athletes that we've worked with who have done the same. Firstly, before we get into the actual training methods and mechanics and all that fun stuff that I'll get into a little bit later in this video, we need to look at the reality of baseball right now. And the reality is that 99% of baseball players are going to be in the middle of the pack, right? And only 1% is really kind of a made up number. It's probably closer to like the 0.1% of all baseball players who get the scholarships, the NIL, the signing bonus, and all of that, right? Let's just say it's the top 1% so that it makes it easy. But most guys are gonna fall into the 99%. And so the question becomes, how do you break out of this and get here? Because the brutal reality is that most guys aren't going to do that, right? That's why getting a scholarship or NIL or signing bonus, getting to professional baseball is a special thing, right? Because it's only for the top percentage of athletes. Now, what is happening right now is this 99% is at a higher standard than it has ever been before. So back in the day, right, if you're throwing 90 miles an hour, maybe you're in the top 1%. But now you're right in the middle. You're right here. Like 90 miles an hour these days is not special at all. And that's why we talk a lot about throwing 95, because that puts you in the top 1%. But the standard is higher. And so now the question becomes, how do you break out of this 99% and get to this 1%? And so there are two big things that you can do to break out of this 99% and get to the top 1%. And the first one is efficiency. Now, with the 99%, right, as I said, the standard has increased, highest it's ever been. And so for the guys who are semi-serious about baseball, right, these guys are all putting in the work, right? They're throwing, every day. They're lifting 3, 4, 5 times a week. They're doing their mobility. They're doing their arm care. They're all doing these things. Right? And so if you're watching this and you think you're gaining an edge by, oh, I'm training, I'm throwing 5 times a week, I'm lifting 5 times a week, like, no, bro, that's like the standard, right? That's the floor. That's the minimum standard. If you're not even doing that, then you're not going to be keeping up with most of these guys, right? But even if you do that, most likely you're going to fall back into the 99% because just putting in the work isn't enough. And so that's where efficiency comes in. And what efficiency basically means is being extremely efficient and intentional with what you're doing when you actually do put in the work. In simpler terms, doing the right stuff for you and your unique situation, right? So if you're doing work, right, and you're throwing and you're lifting 5 times a week, but you're doing random drills, or you're doing random bodybuilding type lifts, or you're just doing, the arm care that your whole high school team does, how do you expect to become a top 1%, right? If you're just doing random stuff, that's not even gonna help you. Another thing that I see a lot of the time is guys who think they're gonna get to the 1% by following their high school or college program, where it's a generic program that everyone on their team is following, right? And so by default, if everyone on the team is doing it, then you're gonna be in the masses, right? You're gonna be stuck in here. How are you supposed to gain an edge when you're doing the same thing as everyone else on your team, right? Everyone on your team is, yes, they're teammates, but you're also competing against them. All of those guys you're competing against, especially to get to the highest level, if you want to get to the Division I professional level, you're competing against all of those guys. There are very limited spots at the top, right? And so maybe only 1, maybe 2 of those guys on your team are actually going to get to the next level, right? And so you need to be the best of the best on that team. And if you're just following what everyone else is doing, then you're leaving it up to chance. And you're pretty much leaving it up to your own genetics and hoping and praying to God that you have elite genetics, right? You're not actually taking control of your career to maximize your chance of breaking through and getting to this 1%. And so what actually helps you break through is, again, with the efficiency, but doing the right lifts, the throwing drills that are actually going to help you in your situation. For example, for myself, with my throwing, I do a lot of stuff that's helping me with separation, right, between my pelvis and my rib cage, because that is my limiting factor for velocity right now. I don't separate as well as I want to. And so everything is tailored toward that. Even stuff in the weight room, a lot of rotational exercises that are all tailored toward attacking that one thing. And imagine if I was just doing random drills, right? I was just doing the traditional driveline, pivot pickoff, I'm doing the roll in, I'm doing the rocker drill, and I'm doing a walking windup. Do you think that's really gonna help me? Do you think that's gonna be the most efficient thing that I can be doing in that throwing session? And I go into the gym and I do bodybuilding, I do curls. And I do bench and I do like chest flies and trying to be as big as I possibly can. You really think that that's gonna make you into the best pitcher that you can be? No, right? And as baseball players, every single training session is extremely precious, right? We can't go out and practice for 4 or 5 hours a day like a basketball player can. We get one throwing session and that's it. If we do too much, then it's gonna be bad for our bodies, right? We're not gonna be able to recover. We can't lift heavy every single day. Can only lift heavy like 3, maybe 4 times a week, right? And so every single training session is so important because you can't do more. You can only be as efficient as you can within those training sessions. And so if someone is improving, right, 1% every single day by doing the right stuff, he is always going to win versus the guy who's doing random stuff and is not even improving. It just makes sense, right? If you're attacking your deficiency, you're attacking your weaknesses, you're working on what you actually need to work on to become a better pitcher and to throw harder, and you're doing that on a daily basis, then you're going to get better. But if you're guessing, right, and you're putting together workouts from social media, you don't really even know what you should be working on and focusing on, and you're just, doing random stuff every single day, the fact is you're not going to be making as much progress and you're going to lose every time to the guy who knows exactly what he needs to focus on and attacks it day in and day out. Now, the second thing that's going to break through from the 99% into the 1% is hard work. And this is not the hard work that you're thinking it is. If you're thinking that lifting, throwing, mobility is hard work, then you've got it backward, right? Because lifting, throwing, mobility, doing these things should be fun, right? It's not hard work. Hard work is something where you really don't want to do it. It's the ugly things that you look at and it's like, I really don't want to do it, but you're still gonna do it, right? All of these things, it's a prerequisite. Like I talked about before, everyone's throwing, everyone's lifting, everyone's doing mobility. You got to upgrade your standard, right? You got to think, oh, everyone that I'm competing against is doing this stuff. So this is just like keeping you a baseline. It's just like keeping you afloat out of the water, right? It's keeping you in this middle of the pack. I mean, if you start slacking on your lifting, throwing, and everything else, you're going backwards. You're going to go into this area, right? But if you are staying consistent with your training, then at least you'll stay here. But then what do you actually do to get here? It's to put in the hard work and to be willing to do whatever it takes to get to the next level. And I'll give you an example. We have an athlete that we are working with and he is in a JUCO and he's responsible for himself financially and everything else. He has to support himself. And so because he's a student athlete, he has to work somehow and make money somehow, right? And so he does Uber Eats every single night. After training, he gets off, goes and does his thing, right? My co-founder, Albertus Barber, he was a guy who wasn't very good, but he was willing to do whatever it took to get to the next level and accomplish his dreams of getting to professional baseball. And so for him, he sold everything that he had. He sold his car, he sold every one of his belongings to be able to go to an elite facility to get the guidance and the training and eventually get signed to professional baseball. For myself, I couldn't afford to get the right guidance and the training and figure out what I needed to do the right stuff. So I had to fundraise. I stood in front of the grocery store and I sold raffle tickets to raise the amount of money to be able to get the right guidance and the training. It also might be that you have to drive, an hour and a half to go train every single day. And even though it sucks and you really don't want to do it, you're still going to do it, right? It's these small things, these ugly things, the not as sexy things that we consider hard work. And when we see guys who are doing these things and are willing to put in that work, then we know that he has the hard work that's necessary to break through out of this middle of the pack 99% into the top 1%. So if you're watching this and you know that you're in the 99%, you're in the middle of the pack, but you want to break through, I want you to ask yourself, are you really willing to do anything and everything that it takes to get to the next level? Or is there something that you could be doing right now to improve either the efficiency of your training or putting in more work? Because you know it might be financial, it might be holding you back from getting the right training. And so are you willing to sacrifice and actually do something about that? Right, and take control of your career. For you, the hard work might be sacrificing and putting in the work day in and day out. It might be, giving up something that you really like, right? For example, just going out Fridays, Saturdays. I mean, that's just gonna be completely detrimental to your career. And so these two things are the things that we see extremely important for the athlete to actually get to the 1%. And I mean, if you don't have these two things, then it's just inevitable for you to end up in the 99% because, again, this is the 99% for a reason. Most of you watching this are doing random workouts. You're not very efficient with your training. You don't take it very seriously. You don't take it like a precious thing to be able to train every single day. There's no sense of urgency. You're like, yeah, I have time. I'm a high school guy, or I'm a college freshman. I have time. And then all of a sudden, time's running out and you're not even close to where you need to be. And what happens? Your baseball career is done. Right? That's the brutal reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And so the guys who actually make it, right, and get to the highest level, find a way to get here. So now let's get into what you've been waiting for, which is the actual process of you not only gaining pitching velocity, but becoming an elite prospect, right? But again, those two things that we just talked about are going to be the foundation, right? Without those things, you're not going to be able to get to the next level. But let's get into a little bit more of the tactical, what you should be doing on a daily basis to be able to develop yourself into a prospect, right? And so I will caveat in saying this. I'm going to do my best to share what I did and what some of our athletes have done to develop themselves into elite prospects. But again, like we talked about, this isn't going to be custom towards you, right? It's not going to be custom built, right? And so the best thing you can do is to have someone help you build a completely customized plan. And if you need help with that, you can book a call with me down below and we can talk about it, or you can send me a message on Instagram and we can talk about it. But for those of you who want to figure it out on your own, here's what I would do. So we talked about efficiency, right? And so the first thing you need to figure out is, what do I need to work on, right? And so the process that I like to see, a very simplified process, is, okay, we're always going to start with strength, then move into power and speed. Okay, and this is how you go up. This is like beginner, medium, advanced athletes. Okay, and so if you're watching this and you're skinny, you're weak, then obviously you need to gain strength. Right? So if you're 6'1" and you're 150 pounds, what are we doing? Let's put on some weight and strength, right? And so you really got to look at yourself and be like, okay, what do I actually need to do? Do I already have a good strength base? Am I strong enough? I'm pretty big built, and so I can go into power and speed. Or are you more of an inexperienced lifter and you're weak and skinny and you have to work on strength, right? And so let's give it an example of a guy who is skinny and weak, right? You're 6'1", you're 155 pounds. What would I do in this situation? Now, this was a similar situation that I was in when I was 16. I was skinny, weak, and I was pumping 78, right? I sucked, basically. And so what we need to do here, if you're a guy whose strength focus is, firstly, build the frame, and then strength accumulation. What building the frame basically means is you need to get into a caloric surplus and start gaining weight and muscle, right? For what I like to see is 2.7 times your body weight in inches, and that's kind of where you want to be at as a general rule. Okay, so if you're lower than that, then I would stay in a caloric surplus and try to gain weight and muscle. And why this matters is because lean mass and muscle is directly correlated to pitching velocity, right? And so the guys who are bigger, stronger, do throw hard, even though it sounds so obvious, right? There is a cap to where like a bodybuilder is not going to throw gas, right? But you do need to get to a certain level to be able to throw at the hardest that you can. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on, is building the frame. And then the second thing is strength accumulation. If you're at this phase where you know you're weak, right? You can't even squat 300 pounds, you can't even deadlift 400 pounds, then I wouldn't even worry about doing these advanced movements that you see on Instagram and YouTube. I put out a video about fast twitch muscles and concentric impulse. I wouldn't even do that. I would just focus on progressively overloading the compound lifts, right? Getting stronger every single week and you keep putting weight on the bar, right? Until you're at a decent strength base where you can squat 350 plus, you can deadlift 400 plus. Now, again, that's a general rule, right? Some people don't need to lift that heavy to be able to throw hard. But as a general rule, that's what we like to see. And so for someone like you, this would be the main focus in the weight room. Okay, and we'll talk about the throwing stuff a little bit later. Now, let's just say that you have a good strength base, right? You're already strong. But if you still throw slow, then that means there's a power central nervous system, just like a fast twitch problem, right? You're not able to really fire. It could also be an athleticism problem where you're not able to coordinate a lot of these things. This is something that we see a lot of the time with college guys, where they go to college, they're doing their college lifting program, which turns them into a strength beast, but they don't throw it any harder. Right? It's very, very common. And so for those guys, we need to get you to start moving quicker. Right? And I've made a bunch of videos on how to actually do this, but this includes like concentric impulse training. This includes sprints, plyometrics, VBT work, and everything else. Especially in the weight room, this is what you will be focusing on. A lot of lower body power, also upper body power as well, right? And then as you really develop power, then you can get into some advanced speed variations, but I'm not going to touch on that as much right now because the majority of you, 99%, are going to fall into one of these two, right? You either need to get stronger and build the frame, or you just need to learn to move fast and build that force production, okay? And so that's what I would do for the lifting side of things. Once you figure out what type of athlete you really are, okay? Now, the second one is your mechanics. Now, this is the hardest one to be able to communicate in a video like this. And so I'm just gonna give you another general example, but mechanics, again, is so individualized to you, right? Like you might have something that you do technically wrong, but it helps you throw harder. For example, for myself, when I threw really hard, I would dive into my toe, right, on my drive leg, which is a big no-no, right, generally. But it really helped me rotate out of it. And by being on my big toe, it helped me be athletic, rotate out of it, and it helped me throw harder than if I was on my heel, right? Everyone's like, oh, load into your heel. But I didn't like that. It made me feel slow. It didn't help me rotate. And so something that was technically wrong turned out to be something that worked for me. And so pitching mechanics, for that reason, is so difficult because what works for me might not work for you, but what works for you might not work for me, right? But as a general rule, right, here are a couple principles that need to happen for you to throw really hard. The first one is the drift. Now, you need to get some linear momentum going toward the target, right, somehow. And this happens usually during the leg lift. So you can be someone who starts going toward the target as soon as you lift your leg, or you could be someone like me who I like to get to more of a balance point, but then I go before I get into my back leg. And so there are different types of drifts. Yamamoto is a really good example where right now he's right here and then it's just go, 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 right? But back in the day, he would come to a balance point right here, but then he would make sure he's shifting before he got into his back leg, right? Both are drifts. Both do the same thing. They just look a little bit different. The second thing is the drop or getting into your back leg, right? And so if you've shifted, then now all you need to do is get into this back leg, right? And what I like to feel is gravity just pulling me down into my back leg. And this doesn't mean getting extremely deep, right? Back leg depth is another thing that's very individualized. When I was a little bit younger, I would get extremely deep into my back leg, like literally like a single leg squat. But nowadays, I'm trying to be a little bit more shallow. It helps me rotate and get down the mount. Okay, and so back leg depth is very individualized, but you do need to get into your back leg somehow. Okay, and so as soon as you shifted your weight, now you can get into your back leg and it's go, go, go. I know I said it feels like gravity pulls you down, right? The back leg is like, it's pretty much like weightless. The back leg is like completely relaxed and it allows you to get down. But at a certain point, there needs to be like a stabilization or an impulse that happens, right? You can't just keep going down, down, down. It's like, boom, you hit your depth and then it stabilizes, right? And there's like an impulse. And what happens during this phase is that you start putting force into the ground, right? Subconsciously, you don't want to be pushing, right? But you're going to start putting force into the ground, and then ground reaction forces are going to send energy back up, right? Which is going to help you get this hip through, this pelvis through, and generate more linear momentum down the mount, okay? And so the next phase is rotate. And so the biggest mistake that I see is guys who are trying to rotate, they try to push, right? To create as much linear momentum down the mount. And that's really the wrong way of going about these things, because when you push, it becomes really hard for you to actually rotate, right? And rotation is where most of your pitching velocity is going to come from. This hip to shoulder separation is where 80% of your pitching velocity comes from. So if you're taking away from that, then you're just taking away from your velocity. That's why if you're on your knees, you should be able to throw like 80% of your top velocity off the mount, right? And so we want to maximize our rotation and create as much separation as we can between our pelvis firing toward the target and everything else, the rib cage, the shoulders, the pec, all staying back and just stretching this, right? And this stretch, this torque is what propels your arm through. Okay, and this has to happen for everyone to throw hard. If you got no hip shoulder separation, I mean, there might be some people out there who throw gas without it, but I mean, it's a steep uphill battle, right? And so you need to rotate. And the last one is the block, right? And this is the front leg block. Everyone knows you need to have a very stable front leg. As soon as your front foot hits, you shouldn't get any more flexion than it already does. If you land at 90 degrees, that's fine, but it shouldn't keep going. It should land at 90 degrees and then it stays at 90 degrees or it starts to extend, right? For myself, I land pretty straight right here, and then as I go to throw, my knee is snapping back, and then I get front leg block action, which propels my whole upper body forward. And so those are the principles of what I think about to throw hard. And obviously there are other things with the upper body, the glove side, the arm action. And again, this is very individualized. And so I wanted to touch on more the principles of what everyone needs to do to be able to throw hard, rather than more individualized examples. Let's talk about the last thing, which is the throwing program. And working out what you specifically need to do with your throwing program in order to maximize your chance of becoming the best pitcher that you can be, the best prospect that you can be, right? And so there are a couple of things here. First thing is, do you need high CNS type throwing? Are you a guy who throws under 85? I mean, you probably need to start doing some velo days, some high CNS type throwing, right? But if you're more of an advanced guy, then you can do a lot more mound work, mechanical work. Small tweaks can help with massive gains in velocity when you're at more of an elite level, right? And even if you're at a low level, if you do have the right guidance and you're working on your mechanics, you're gonna have major gains when working with your mechanics, okay? But if you're throwing like 95 plus or, in the low note, you probably don't need to, go out and pull down every week or anything like that. At that point, it's about fine tuning your mechanics and really getting everything out of your frame and developing force production and making your mechanics as efficient as possible, right? And so the drill work, again, these drills should be directly attacking your weaknesses and your deficiencies in your mechanics, right? Again, going back to my example, my spine is a big one, right? And so I have a hard time separating. And so a lot of my drills, my plyo ball drills, my medicine ball drills are all attacking this issue of, okay, let's get you rotating a little bit better, right? And so that allows me to have the most efficiency out of my throwing programs. And I know I talked mostly about gaining pitching velocity this whole time, but to become an elite prospect, obviously we need to be a good pitcher, right? And so this is something that you would have to consider if you're a guy who already throws hard, or you can also work on this at the same time as trying to gain pitching velocity, right? And pitching involves a lot of things, but being a good pitcher really only comes down to three things. It's velo, command, and stuff. And if you have above average of all of these, then you're pretty much a legit prospect at that point, right? If you throw above average, let's just say you're throwing 93, okay, which is above average. You throw strikes, above average command, so you throw strikes. You're not pinpointing, but you're in the zone, right? And you have above average stuff, so you have a good slider, a changeup, maybe a curveball as well. I mean, at that point, you're going D1, right? Or if you're already at a D1 and you have above average velo, above average command, and above average stuff, you're going to get drafted, right? And so these three things are the things that I'm going to be looking at. And obviously, we talked a lot about velo. Command is a video in of its own, but that's something that you can definitely train as well. The one thing I will say about command is that mechanics do influence command. So better, more efficient mechanics, which can help you throw harder, is also going to help you throw more strikes. One of our athletes, Ryan, came to us and he couldn't throw over 91, 92 miles an hour. He had really bad command issues. And part of it was because his mechanics just were making it really hard for him to throw strikes. Now, after working with him, he is up to 95 and he won National Pitcher of the Year at a JUCO. Why that happened was because we cleaned up a lot of the mechanical deficiencies that he had, and one of them was directing more energy through the plate, right? Instead of it going this way or this way, right? He had a tendency of just wanting to rotate like this rather than directing energy through the plate. And so it can go hand in hand. And command, yeah, this is a whole video in of itself, but it's mechanics plus mental training. And then stuff is also just a pitch design thing. Stuff is probably the easiest to develop. Like nowadays you can get with a decent coach and they'll teach you how to throw nasty stuff, no issues, right? Within like an hour. But the number one thing out of these three that are gonna influence your ability to become a prospect is velo. Without velo, these two really don't matter. You can throw all the strikes you want and have the nastiest sweeper, sinker, change up, kick change that you want, but if you throw 82, like you're not gonna get very far. But if you throw 95 and you struggle a little bit with command and your stuff isn't really that great, people are still gonna give you a chance because hey, if we can work out your command and we can work out your stuff, then you still have potential, right? And a lot of the time, this is what especially professional organizations are looking at is potential. Can we develop him into an elite prospect? And they will take a chance on you. Those are the three things that I think about. And I know it sounds like a lot and it can feel overwhelming for someone like you watching this and you feel like you want to get to the next level. And so if you feel like you want help with this and get guided by people who have actually done that and have helped others get to the top 1%, then again, you can book a call with me down below. We can talk about it. We can talk about your situation, how we might be able to help, and I'll even give you some feedback on your mechanics. Or you can just send me a message on Instagram, ask me a couple questions, and I can get back to you as well. But hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.